Today, we do a 3-round rookie mock draft reacting to the NFL Scouting Combine. We're excited to talk about how these performances impact our views of where the tier breaks are and what this means for our Dynasty fantasy leagues. And welcome into the Down Construction Podcast. Got the whole band together, Justin with David, JP. JP, you missed our winners and losers, but good news. Almost all those guys we're going to talk about in our draft today.
I put in a lot to that doc at least, so I was pretty entrenched into it. But yeah, I was a little unhappy that I couldn't meet up with you guys, but I know you guys did a good job. You held down the fort.
We made sure to mention how much you loved Matthew Golden, Ayomanar, if I said that right, and Higgins. So we alluded to the fact that you might be trying to take those guys ahead of us in this draft here today. Before we hop right in, we are approaching 500 subscribers. And in fact, when we hit that, we're going to be doing some giveaways. We want you to let us know in the comments below if you would prefer a listener league with listener league spots as our giveaway or some free roster reviews. So let us know in the comment which of those you prefer. And we'll make sure to also note your name down if you comment and are subscribed for potential giveaway entries as well. So with that being said, we're going to be using our standard format, 1.75 tight end premium, 6 points passing touchdown, start 11. Not that impact rookie draft picks much, but maybe just the upside swings that we take versus floors. And with that being said, David, you are going to randomize our draft positions here so we couldn't be super prepared. Go ahead and let us know where we're picking from.
All right, drum roll, please. Asking ChatGPT. I just didn't want to share with, my browser history there on ChatGPT. It's like showing you guys my soul. Justin, David, JP. That is our order. Justin, 101. I will take the 102. JP, the 103. And then we will restart Justin at the 104. Justin, I kind of have a feeling I know what you're doing here.
Yeah, not much to say. I'm going to take 20 seconds here. I'm going to take Ashton Genty, generational running back. It's a no-brainer. There is no situation as of right now I'd consider taking anyone else. If I need wide receiver, I'm trying to trade cross-positionally for a vet.
I agree. I think we all are on the same page there. Hard to pass up the guy, especially here in top 10 draft capital as a potential now. I'm going to make this one easy too. Pretty standard 102 for most leagues that I've seen. I'm going Ted McMillan. I know some people have discussed other guys potentially as wide receiver one recently. I'm not buying it. I still think he's the first one to go unless Travis Hunter decides to be a receiver full-time. Guy's huge. He moves well. He's got good hands. He can play outside. He can play inside. He's going to be a lot of fun in the NFL. JP, go ahead and take us away at 103.
And the draft begins.
The draft begins, yeah. The guy that I like the most here, and I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton. And he's a guy that you guys certainly talked about in the last episode because this guy has a 9.93 RAS score. That is ridiculously good. And when you combine that with early declare, 21 years old, he's got the size, he's got the production, 2 years of really good production. And he also is one of the more impressive receivers in this class. I think this guy's probably right in that conversation for top 10, top 12 dynasty running backs right off the bat. And if he gets a good landing spot, which there's a lot of good landing spots at the beginning of the second round, back of the first, I think that this could be a consensus for where he does go. But I love the prospect, and he would be RB1 in a lot of different classes.
Just because you took the guy that I would have loved to take here, and now it's Superflex, I've got to go quarterback here. And going quarterback, I'm going to go the guy that I think has more fantasy upside in Cam Ward. Just need dependent whether you'd take him at the 103 versus Hampton. In a vacuum, I'd probably prefer Hampton just because if I don't need quarterback, I'd prefer the running back. And just I think he's got a safer floor and a high ceiling as well. But Cam Ward, a guy that has some mobility here. He's a competent enough thrower, and we're projecting top 5-ish draft capital at this point. Not gonna lie, I would prefer every quarterback from last year's draft class besides Penix probably over him at this point. So I'd be looking to trade this pick potentially if I need quarterback. If I could try to go get a Bo Nix for this pick, I would love to do that. I'd probably be willing to take the shot on JJ McCarthy, but if I gotta take a quarterback from this class, this is the guy for me, and I can't pass up on quarterback and Superflex at this point.
I just traded for Bo Nix myself. I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that was a 3-team deal with a lot of parts. It would take like a whole hour-long show to break that one. But if you're happy, I'm happy for you, buddy.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix is just a great trade target. I think that's a good point. I think he's just
Absolutely. I do like Cam Ward, though. I think the NFL starting to tell us that they like him, too. Very real possibility he goes 103 in most drafts. I think Omari and Hampton's still a fine pick there, but those are my clear top four. I'm in a little bit of a limbo spot here. I think it's a little early for me to go Tyler Warren, even in the 175 premium, though I would consider it. Too much concern about where Shador is going to go for me to think about him here. I like these running backs, but I don't know how to sort these three. I'm assuming this draft is happening right now, and we're drafting before we have any information. There's no landing spot, so I just have to take whatever I take and live with it. I'm going to go, this is start 11. I don't like burning the 105. I know I might end up with more than 5 players that have more value than him overall. I just don't see how Emeka Egbuka is a miss at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and take him on the fence between him, Burden, and Trevion Henderson. Like I said, I'm just going to go with the floor here. All things considered, drafting before the NFL draft has me lean floor a little bit, sometimes a little bit towards safety in these early picks. I really don't want to swing and miss here at the 105 with the knowledge I have right now. I just feel really comfortable with where Egbuka is going to go.
Is this a homer pick, JP? It looks like a homer pick.
might be because I guess he's your wide receiver too then, because I think there's a couple guys who could be right there.
Oh, there absolutely are. Like I said, this is a floor pick. This isn't an upside pick.
Difficult pick. I kind of thought that you might consider Shador, and I was kind of on the fence for who I was going to take as well. I think this 105, 106 spot is really, really difficult. Shador is certainly a consideration. He's one of the top 2 or 3 guys. You mentioned Trevion Henderson. He's my next running back, and my next receiver would be Luther Burden. Tyler Warren's also interesting, so I could go any direction as well. I think I am going to go with Luther Burden because I really like what he did at the combine. He came in 6'206". His speed score was 88th percentile. I think you went with the floor play. I went with a little more upside here, although you could argue the quarterback's probably the highest upside of them all. Just not the biggest Shador Sanders fan, but I think he's an appropriate pick at this spot. But I'm going to go with Luther Burden. I really like what he can do after the catch. And now that I saw that he's a really high athlete as well, I think that's going to secure first-round draft capital for him. And I think he could even go top 25.
You're leaving me with a tough spot here. My instincts are to go Trevion Henderson or Warren at this point. It's hard to pass Sanders at this spot as well, just because it's super flex. I think we're expecting top 10 draft capital, possibly top 5, although never know what's going to really happen.
Right.
The fact that there are 3 running backs that are fringe, like first round fantasy draft players in Henderson, Judkins, and Johnson that we could take here makes it difficult for me to take running back here. But I do think that Henderson's probably the best player on my board at this point. So I think even though that scares me off running back a little bit, I'm like, I can try to take a different guy later, even though I don't obviously actually have the 112. I don't actually have the 110 in a real draft in this situation. I'm drafting every 3. I think Henderson at the 107 is pretty good value, and I think that's what I have to do here.
I do not blame you at all. He was going to be my pick if he was still on the board. Love the explosiveness he has, his pass catching ability. I just think he'll definitely have a role somewhere, probably the majority of the touches out of the backfield, but efficient enough that even if he's not the main guy out of his backfield, he should be the better fantasy asset. Definitely like that pick there. I was kind of down to either Henderson or Tyler Warren, so I will kind of make this quick. I'm going to go with our tight end 1, as this is a 175 tight end premium. Sounds like he's going to be going in the top half of the first round. There's a few guys we really like at tight end in this class, but he's one that I expect to be on the field early. I expect to be the first tight end off the board. He's shown us a lot of things that he can do that are pretty cool outside of just being a tight end. He did some wildcat stuff. He took some end rounds, even threw a couple of passes. Love the versatility. Love the fact that I get him here at the 108. Pretty happy with Tyler Warren.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a lot of playing time wherever he's drafted. And I mean, you see him mocked in the top 15 oftentimes. I think he could go to a team where he could be the immediate second option. I just hope it's not that Colts landing spot. That one is just disgusting to me. They have a lot of receiving options and a running quarterback. But otherwise, I would love Warren. I don't blame you there. The tight end premium, he's probably a top 5 dynasty tight end right off the jump. He would be for me.
I also just want to bring up a little quick discussion. I know we want to keep some of these first round conversations short, but this is just something I want to start thinking about and put in your brain. Our audience kind of know what they think on him as well. Warren, that is. The Colts is a gross landing spot. The Raiders was a gross landing spot for Bowers. So I just want to start thinking, framing this conversation. If Warren does go to the Colts, if that is his end destination, which I've seen mocked at least 10 times this offseason already, is that something that is more of just a short-term issue that might not even end end up actually really being an issue? Talent could win out and it's a buying opportunity? Or is that something that we think we actually want to be concerned about?
I mean, you'd love for him to go to an offense that has a good quarterback that can get him the ball accurately. I don't know. I'm not in love. I know they've got some decent options there. I'm not really in love with any of them. I don't think any of them would prevent Warren from having a slice of the offense. I don't know, is Anthony Richardson going to be the starter there? They sound like they're going to try to sign a veteran. I expect Richardson to have the inside leg on the competition, but it kind of depends on what else they do. So I guess the answer is yeah, I'd be concerned, but I'm still probably drafting him in this range, even if that happens.
Yeah, I really don't like it personally. I mean, they have a much better running back than the Raiders did, so I think they're going to be more run heavy with Jonathan Taylor as opposed to Amir Abdullah's Zamir White and that whole, just crappy running back room. And I think they had Jacoby Myers and Devonta Adams for half a season. I think they got 4 decent guys. If A.D. Mitchell does turn out to be decent, his targets per route run was pretty good. I think Josh Downs, he gets a lot of targets. Michael Pittman, we see, can do that as well. And if the quarterback room is also similar in that way to where it's like, okay, they don't really have a great passer. If it is Anthony Richardson, they're just going to be so run heavy that I think it might be worse than the Raiders and a worse prospect overall, just from Brock Bowers, a generational guy there. So, yeah, I don't love it personally, but I think it could be better going forward if they figure out the quarterback spot. Pierce might be gone, which, I mean, that's not a huge piece, but they just kind of have 4 guys that I think are just good receivers there.
All right, something I definitely want to revisit as we get closer to the draft, and especially, God forbid, if he actually does end up on the Colts.
Hey, for Anthony Richardson, if you have stock of him, I think that's a really good thing for him specifically, but just not Tyler Warren.
I try not to roster bad players, so I have no Anthony Richardson.
You got a lot of upside there still. He's younger than Cam Ward and Shador, which, speaking of Shador, he's going to be my selection here. I'm going to stop the fall here. I mean, at this price point, if I'm getting a quarterback who's probably going to be starting, he's going to be young, given an opportunity for a couple of years, I don't mind it at all, especially because he's going to have at least 2 years of a chance, maybe 3 years if he doesn't, really tank in the NFL. But I think that he probably will succeed. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback just based on the tools, the athleticism, just size, and not really as much creation ability that you want to see. But he could be a guy like Tua, had that kind of a career. And if you put him in a good situation, he could rise up even more than this. I think the Giants is not a bad spot. I think Brian Daboll is a good coach. They got Malik Neighbors. We'll just see what happens. But I think this is probably as late as he probably should go, maybe 110 at the latest. But I think you could see him go as high as 105 still.
I was listening to a Ballers Dynasty mock draft earlier today, Fantasy Footballers. They did not take Shador Sanders in the first 2 rounds. Superflex mock draft. I know they hate quarterbacks in general, but man, that felt crazy to me, like a massive overreaction to the news that he might slide a little bit.
No, actually, so I'm gonna break some news. That sounds crazy because that is crazy. Sanders at the 109. I was running some mocks to prepare for this, and I did not let him slide past that when he slid to me there in that league. I had the 109 and I wound up with him several times. I'm like, I can't pass up on him at this point. Like I think that's kind of like the end of the fall. Like you have to at that point.
Yeah.
At the 110, it gets a little interesting for me. Again, like I said, there were 3 running backs that I was interested in my last pick, and 2 of them, Judkins and Caleb Johnson, are still here. Not really thinking Colston Loveland yet, even with the 1.75 tight end premium, although his name pops into my mind. I don't think I'm going to take him over a projected first round wide receiver or a guy like Judkins, who is a huge combine winner. So to me, it's going to come between Judkins, who I think is a decent passing back, a guy who can, take screens, but is probably not running a wheel route type of guy. A guy in Golden who killed the combine, showed speed. People are saying, which David and I talked about this in our last episode. We don't think this is realistic at all, that he could even be the first wide receiver off the board with the speed, but certainly has cemented himself as a first rounder. And I think I'm going to take the first round wide receiver. Plus, I love speed guys from Texas. So it's Golden for me.
I like how you're trying to claim him now that he ran the faster 40.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've been on him all off season. Fingers might be crossed.
Hey, I was talking before the offseason.
I think that was kind of funny because JP's been high on him. Now Justin's trying to sneak in. And,
nothing to see here.
Doing this mock draft just kind of speaks to the depth here. You can even go as high as 102, but certainly from 105 to like the end of this round, kind of order these picks in any order you want. And I'm not going to really complain much or call you an idiot or think you're wrong at all. I think you could even honestly argue up to the 201. So there's 3 players left that I'm considering in this tier. It's Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Colston Loveland. So I'm going to go with the Combine Riser. I'm going to stick with the strength of this draft. And I'm going to take RB4. I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins.
Now, there's one time could be a coincidence. 2 times has to be homer picks, right, JP?
Yeah, we know how David is. He only wants to take the Ohio State guys. We know it in our real draft.
If he drafts Will Howard in the late 3rd round, I'm quitting.
We're sniping him. We can't let him do that. He's going to get the whole what he got? He's got Ibuka, Quinshon Judkins. Yeah, he's just getting the national championship team. We see what you're doing, David.
Hey, man, can I have Jeremiah Smith, too?
I want to actually change my 104 to Jeremiah Smith and just have him sit for 2 years.
Change my 102 to Jeremiah Smith.
I'm about to say, he's like in that conversation with Ashton Genty, like top 5, top 10 dynasty wide receiver if you could take him right now. Yeah, he's that good. He's that good. That might be aggressive. But anyways, David, you mentioned a couple of names that I'm also considering. And we still have Caleb Johnson on the board. And I think I have to take him here, although I was considering Travis Hunter and Colston Loveland. But Caleb Johnson, still think he's a really good prospect. The combine wasn't amazing necessarily, but still his speed score was above average when you consider the fact that he was 224 pounds. So he came in heavier than Hampton, Judkins, Trayvon Henderson. So this is a big, powerful back. I'm a little bit discouraged that his 10-yard split was the worst of all the running backs in the class. I think it's kind of similar to what you see with Derrick Henry. I'm not calling him Derrick Henry, but I think it's just bigger back and want their feet stop. They don't have quite that acceleration, but once they have a lane, he can just still fly when he's in the open field. And he did a lot for the Iowa team this year. So I think at the very end of the 1st round, I still really like him at this spot.
I was kind of hoping you'd take Travis Hunter, so I wouldn't be forced to make any decisions at the 201 here. My thought process here, Loveland in a 1.75 tight end premium. Like I said, at the 110, that was the first time his name crossed my mind as a potential, but I didn't think he was a good pick there because I would have preferred Judkins. I would have preferred, obviously, Golden, who I took. The 112 is when I really start to think him. It's very tough between him and the upside of Travis Hunter. I was asking in the chat earlier, when do we take him? Last time we were taking him around the 1-2 turn with the uncertainty. He says, I'm different. I'm going to play both. If he does play 85% of the snaps at wide receiver, just rests occasionally, maybe it's more they take him off in 2 wide receiver sets. Maybe he's just too good to get taken off. Who knows? He's a steal at the 201. I really genuinely don't know what to do here in a 1.75 tight end premium when I don't know what to do here. I think I'm going to take Loveland, even though I know I could definitely end up regret not going for the home run swing.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I think, at least where I'm at right now with Hunter, there's one more prospect that I feel pretty good about based on what we're hearing. So I would definitely take him before Hunter, and that's who I will end up taking. But I think the earliest I could take Hunter right now is the 203. Look, the upside is insane because if he was a full-time receiver, he'd probably be the 102. But you might just be lighting this pick on fire, and we just have no idea right now. It seems like the most logical thing is for him to play corner full-time and part-time receiver. So that's kind of what I expect. I can understand taking him anytime, honestly, from the 201 on. But I've heard Jackson Dart get mentioned a lot. It sounds like he might be a first rounder. I even saw Charles Davis's latest mock, which came out after the combine. He had him at the 103 going to the Giants. I don't expect that to happen, but if I just got the 3rd overall pick in the draft at quarterback here at 202, that's definitely a steal. I expect him to go somewhere where he at least has a shot at opportunity of starting in the next couple of years. So I'm going to go ahead and take the last guy that I feel fairly comfortable with, at least at this point in the process. And I think JP's probably going to stop the slide. If not, one of these next few picks, I imagine Travis Hunter will go.
Will I stop the slide? Yeah, I definitely will. There's no more thought for me to even put into this. I've been rising even more on Travis Hunter. I've heard people that just watch the film, Matt Harmon's one of them. He said that he would be like a tier 1 wide receiver prospect if he was playing exclusively wide receiver, just based on some of the ball skills that he has are ridiculous, the athleticism. And even though he's not refined as a route runner, it's not even a weakness. I think he said he charted 3 games and his press coverage success rate would be like top 3 for any rookies ever recorded. So that's crazy when you're only part-time in the offensive meetings and part-time in the defensive meetings. When you look at the top 4 teams, the Titans, the Browns, Giants, and Patriots. All 4 of those teams except for the Giants, I think he would be the best wide receiver on that team if he stepped on the field. And he probably will play both ways this year. I think eventually he might cross his mind I'm getting paid this amount of money and I'm playing both sides of the ball. Is it really worth it? Maybe that'll cross his mind eventually from a business perspective. And I think if he's at least playing wide receiver and he's excelling in some fashion, the money is double what it is for corners at the top end of the market, just about double. So I kind of been more open-minded that he could play wide receiver. Like you said, there's a chance you could be lighting this pick on fire. The early second, I don't really care because what's the hit rate? 50-50, maybe even less at this point. So even if it does miss, a pick in this range, like I said, the 40% chance hit rate. Yeah, you might still be able to sell, as the price is slowly falling if somebody's not performing. Travis Hunter could be going like that. But I think there's always going to be hope for the Heisman winner for this guy that has this much athleticism. I mean, even if it's a second contract thing, I don't know. I just think his upside is way too high. So I would be ecstatic if I got him at the 203 anywhere.
Yeah, like I said, I was pretty torn at the 201, but it's risk reward. It's a lottery pick with the upside. Can't blame you whatsoever. At the 204, I'm kind of torn here. We have wide receiver Trey Harris with a great analytical profile. Kind of considering him, but thinking that this offseason of looking at guys like Leggett, he reminds me a little bit of Leggett, although he had a bit longer production, athletic, some production. Not so sure, if he's up there. Thinking it's Cam Scadabo here. Potentially, we consider him a round 1-2 turn guy in our last mock draft. I'm a little worried he didn't run at the combine, although again, not necessarily what he was gonna, win his bread in. At the end of the day, I'm picking between him and Jalen Milroe, quarterback Alabama, guy that can rush like nobody's business. Milroe, there's speculation of him potentially going in the second round. People speculate maybe he's a guy that could be taken in the late first, like somebody trades in to get a 5th-year option on him, trades with the Eagles, Chiefs, gets that pick because they want to get that. And the rushing upside that this guy has in the early second, I think that's the direction I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with the quarterback and it's crazy thinking I'm getting a lottery pick here that has a decent upside, but I'd much rather take your lottery pick of Hunter than this lottery pick one pick later, JP. Can we make a swap see?
No, I think you just feel better about the talent from what you see from Travis Hunter. That's the reason why, huh?
Yeah, I mean, one of them did win the Heisman, the other one didn't. So,
Justin, let me ask you this just real quick. I don't know if you're considering at all that if the 104 is the same picks for the same team, you just took Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe. Was that in consideration at all, or are you just taking these picks independent?
I'm just trying to take the best player available at this point. If I had taken Cam Ward, I'd probably be more likely to take Scadabo at this point. But yeah, I wasn't taking that into consideration at all.
Fair enough. I was kind of wondering because at this point in the draft, if I was the 105 team, I took Egbuka last round, I'd probably be strongly considering a running back here just because I don't want to miss on the strength of this class. I think it's kind of bad strategy, bad process to just completely miss on the strongest position, especially when it's as important it is, as deep as it is. So if I was actually picking and I was the 105, those were my picks, I might consider a different direction, but I'm going to go Trey Harris here. He is kind of the last guy having this tier. I think the running backs get really muddy after this. I love a lot of these prospects, but I have no idea who's going to go next in the NFL draft. So I'm going to stick with Trey Harris here. Great analytical profile. Could be a lot of fun. Tested well at the combine. Yeah, I think he was the last receiver that I feel any urge to draft. I might end up taking one later on, but the last one that I feel actually kind of happy to draft here.
Yeah, I think that this might end up being right where the teardrop is. Because I think Scadabo could fall in the draft, maybe 3rd, 4th round potentially. Personally, he is somebody that I really believe in. He's my pick, like without a doubt, because there's nobody else that I really, really think has the upside that he has at this point. I mean, we've seen there's not many people that in the college football that have had 1,500 rushing yards and over 500 receiving yards in the same season. This guy is an absolute dog. His missed tackles force is ridiculous. And although he didn't run, his vertical jump was still, I think it was top 3 in the class. So I think he's got some burst there as well. There's nobody else that I really have a whole lot of just excitement about. He's the one guy I think could really climb. I think I could see him going in round 2 if a team really likes him because he's a do-it-all guy. You don't have to take him off the field. He's going to be high effort, give you everything on every play. He can do it all. And I think his upside is really, really high from a fantasy perspective specifically.
Don't blame you there. Kind of glad you took him because I would have taken him here and I wouldn't be upset about taking him here. But I think it's more fun to get to pick out of the muck at this point, to be honest. It's a little exciting because now I have, pre-combine who I'd be considering here and post-combine who I'm looking at here pretty different. So I'm big teardrop for me at this point. I don't feel comfortable enough in who's tight end 3 in a 1.75 to really be considering a tight end at this this point. If I knew who was going to be tight end 3, I'd probably take him right here, whether it's Mason Taylor, Ferguson, Fannin, one of those guys potentially, but it's pretty murky there. So I'm looking between a couple combine darlings. I think out of the players who are left, the 2 best at their position, looking at either Jaden Higgins, wide receiver from Iowa State, or mispronouncing the name Bashul Tutin. Correct me where I'm wrong, guys.
You got it.
Good enough for me.
All right. That's a wrap, guys. We got a name right. First time in the podcast history. Process-wise, I think I probably would go with the running back process-wise typically. There is some first-round buzz for Higgins. He's huge. And I just know if I take him, JP can't. So I'm going to go that direction.
That's funny.
His RAS score, and I'm sure you guys read it off there, but the 94th plus percentiles, height, weight, speed score, all of it. It's very impressive.
I mean, 6'4", like I compared him in size, height-wise, like this is Kelvin Johnson height, right? Obviously, Johnson was 240, Megatron was a unit, right? But we don't see 6'4" wide receivers all the time. We see 6'4" wide receivers pre-combine all the time, right? They come in at 6'1 3/4.
Yeah.
This is a man. This is a big guy, right? A boundary wide receiver. He's fast. Showed some athleticism on top of just that like linear speed. Really excited about this guy. If he sneaks into the back end of the first round, gosh, like I'm ecstatic of taking him here. And I think with his size and his speed, it's not impossible for somebody in the back of the first round to try to take this guy. Chiefs.
No, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, I kind of boldly called out that he could be a top 40 pick like a month ago, and it wasn't really talked about that much. And I think he's definitely in that conversation now. And I'm looking at this, his arms, not only is he really tall, but his arms are longer than the top tackles. Will Campbell, he's got longer arms than that guy. So yeah, not only is he tall, but he's got the wingspan to go with it.
I mean, to be fair, they're talking about whether or not Will Campbell can play offensive tackle because of his short wingspans.
Well, maybe Jaden Higgins can then, because he's big.
Put some meat on them bones.
Quarterback wide receiver makes some sense, but can you play like offensive tackle? I mean, like it would just be the Lions should take him then, and just like he could report it as eligible. I mean, like we could have a lot of
as long as he remembers to tell the ref.
Just tell the refs.
We'll replace Dan Skipper, right? He was the one that caught the touchdown.
All right, so next pick. Not going to be as fun as that one, I don't think. What I want to do here is take, the RB7 from the NFL draft. So there's a few guys it could be. I think Ollie Gordon has a shot. I think Dylan Sampson has a shot. I like RJ Harvey. I'm not quite sure that it's time to take him yet. DJ Giddens had an excellent combine. For me, I think I'm between Tootin and Giddens. Yeah, I mean, Ollie Gordon, Dylan Sampson. I think those 4 probably have the highest chance of being the next running backs off the board. There's still several more that I like, so this is just a fun class. I like having seconds in this class. I'm going to go with the Combine Warrior, though. We're going with Bashal Tootin. Just an excellent speed score, great testing, good size. Liked what I saw when I watched him before the Combine. I think he'll at least be a day 2 pick, maybe in the 3rd round. But at this point in the draft, I'm okay getting a 3rd round running back at the 208.
Cannot disagree with that at all. Like we talked about this in our last video. He has the same 40-yard speed time as A-Chain, and he has 20-ish pounds on A-Chain, right? This guy weighs in at, I think it was 206, A-Chain 188, same 40-yard speed. Like, that's crazy. So I think that's a beautiful pick there, David. Like I said, I would have actually taken him probably over Higgins. I just didn't want to give JP a shot at him.
Yeah, Tootin's probably the biggest riser from the whole combine process in general. And I saw a lot of people rising on him before that because his missed tackles force numbers were really, really up there as well. So yeah, I think it's justified for him to be in this conversation for sure. I'm still going to stick with my guy, Devin Neal, at running back. I really, really like how he's consistent from down to down. He's not the athlete like Bashal Tootin, not the near that. I mean, there's hardly anybody that's the athlete that Tootin is. Sheesh. I wish Devin Neal ran faster. I told you, David, in our group chat. I said, I hope he gets at least under a 4.58 for Devin Neal. And he ran exactly a 4.58. I was hoping to see it under, but I still think based on what we've seen from guys that have proved to have really, really good vision in college and ability to cut, like Kyron Williams, Bucky Irving, I think there's still a path for him to be good. I like him as a pass catcher as well. I think he's a really smart player, just has great instincts. I mean, some of his highlights are ridiculous. There's no hole, and he just somehow finds and squeezes through a lane. And I just think he's an impressive player that an NFL coach is really, really going to fall in love with.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm a little bit scared off by the speed, but I think we're seeing more and more in the NFL that especially guys that have that wiggle don't necessarily need to have the long speed, right? If they have that acceleration, if they have the ability to make people miss. Like,
I think he plays fast because he diagnoses just lanes and because of his vision. I think it allows him to play a little faster than that speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And 4.58's not fast, but it's not egregious. Can't blame you there, and appreciate you sticking with your guy. At this point, I'm not really sure what direction to go, but I am going to go running back. Probably. I think there's at least one or two other guys that I think, based off of the pre-draft opinions we have of them, that they're worth consideration. The guys I'm looking at are Ollie Gordon. I'm looking at Dylan Sampson, and I have some interest based off of combine performances in RJ Harvey and DJ Giddens at this point, based off of their speed, and that we liked them well enough pre-combine as well. At the end of the day here, I think I'm going to go Dylan Sampson, the back out of Tennessee.
I like it.
Was not able to rise because of the combine. David was saying he's heard some news that there was a potential injury, and that's why he did not run. Would have loved to see him. I think we'll see him run at the Pro Day, which is, still a data point, although it's not considered as valid as the combine. I think that validity issue is smaller than it used to be, a decade ago. So could change if he runs slow at his Pro Day, but the guy was productive. I think he's going to run fast at his Pro Day, and if he had in the 4.4s 40 time at the combine, there's a good chance that, we might have taken him several picks before now.
Super young too. Youngest back in the class.
20, right? He's like a Braylon Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will he be able to drink before his first game?
I think it's a really tight race. I think his birthday is like either late August or early September. So
as long as his birthday doesn't change, we could know
it'll be right around. Yeah, he filed a petition to change it. He just hasn't heard back yet. Well, here we are at this point in the draft. I'm pretty much just firing off running backs and tight ends, and I'm kind of stuck between my next running back or my next tight end. I still have a couple of running backs I like. I'd be between Ollie Gordon here, DJ Giddens, RJ Harvey. Those are my next three running backs personally. Tight ends, I think Elijah Arroyo, Harold Fannin, Mason Taylor, probably maybe Terrence Ferguson. This is tough, man. I'm going to go with some name value here because I think I can sell him off of that to some people, maybe not everyone. I'm going to take Ollie Gordon. I think his sophomore season is too hard to ignore completely, even though he had a rough season last year. Didn't run a great 40, but didn't test horribly overall. A little bit taller. Has a chance to be a 3-down back, has a chance to be terrible. So at the 211, taking a little swing at upside in the running back room.
Yeah, I can't blame you. He's got plenty of size. I mean, he's much thicker than most of the running backs in most classes, and he's got the Doak Walker winner to his name after his sophomore season. If you look at the list of Doak Walker Award winners, it's really impressive. So that's something that makes you really encouraged for him as a player. For me, I'm going to take who I believe is in the conversation for the tight end 3. Could be between a couple of guys, as you mentioned, but the guy that I like is Elijah Arroyo. And I saw it was some sort of GPS testing at the Senior Bowl. It was Harold Fannin and Elijah Arroyo were the two fastest there. And I mean, Arroyo's got about 10 pounds on Harold Fannin as well, and they were just like neck and neck. So I think if we did see Arroyo run, we would be pretty encouraged about his RAS, speed, score, all that. Fortunately, we didn't see it, but I think what he can do as a receiver is really enticing. I think there's a lot of upside there. His missed tackles force are very impressive, and his ADOT is also very high, which is not something you typically see go hand in hand. But he's somebody that I really, really like. But Harold Fannin was definitely a consideration here as well.
He was a guy we were expecting to perform pretty well if he did perform at the combine. A little disappointing we did not get to see all of that. The GPS data you mentioned is interesting. I am definitely going to do exactly what David said we should be doing at this point still, probably, which is hammering RB or hammering tight end. There's still at least 4 guys that should come off the board before I'm considering a wide receiver based off of my process, what I know. Although A.O. Manor, a little interesting at this point. Like I'm starting to consider him at this point, but without knowing draft capital, it's hard.
Right.
I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually snipe a guy that's going to be someone David would be interested in and take RJ Harvey. Speedster. I'm just in a sniping mood. Screw you guys. I'm here to cause chaos and make enemies.
Eat it, David. Eat it. Your guy.
He is, man. I'm a huge RJ Harvey fan. He tested really well at the combines.
You're smarter than me, so just tell everyone why I'm right for picking him here, David.
I don't know if I'm smarter than you, but I might know a little more about him than you. Like, he's really explosive. He's fast. I think he'll probably do better if he has a partner who can handle some of the early down works and the short yardage stuff. But I think he could end up taking the majority share of his backfield. If not, again, he's someone I think could be efficient enough in 40% timeshare or something. So I think that's a good pick because I think he's got some a few more ways to success than some of these other guys that we're talking about in this range.
Sure.
And my next pick, still just going to be firing off running backs or tight ends for at least the next probably 2 picks of mine.
So you're not considering A.O. Manor?
If I knew he was going to be a second round pick, or if I knew Jalen Noel was going to be a second round pick, or any of these other receivers we kind of like, Jalen Royals, I would consider them. But at this point, I don't. And if they end up, especially on day 3, then it's just a complete swing and a miss. It feels like I'm going to go ahead and take. I think he's fallen a little too far. I'm going to go and take DJ Giddens. He had a terrific combine. I think he could go as high as RB6 in this class, and that's kind of what we've been talking about through the last 6 or 7 RB picks. What 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any of these 7 RBs could go in any order, and there's probably another 1 or 2 you could throw into this mix. So I'll just take another dart throw at the strongest position, a guy we like, a guy with a good athletic profile, good production profile to match. So really happy with DJ Giddens here at the top of the 3rd.
Yeah, he's got pretty good production. We've seen him have some solid receiving production as well. I mentioned last time we talked about him, his cutting ability is really, really strong. And then he combines that with a strong 40 time, which I didn't really expect. I heard a lot of people concerned about the long speed, but he answered that question. And he did it in a really strong fashion. So I think him rising up a little bit makes some sense. I'm going to go take Harold Fannin here. I considered him on my last pick. Also could be.
I wanted him.
Oh, well, you had to snipe David, which I'm proud of you. So maybe that'll make you feel better. But yeah, Harold Fannin, ridiculous production. We know about this guy. I mean, his combine performance wasn't quite what we hoped it to be. He did come in at 241 pounds, though. So that was a big box for him to check. I think his agility drill, his scores there were still pretty impressive. So, and if you look at his game log, he did well against some big schools as well, like Penn State and Texas A&M. So I don't think the competition's that big of a concern. He's also a young guy. So I think at this spot, I'd be pretty thrilled to get him.
Yeah, that would have been my guy with the next pick. Very few questions asked. Since I can't take him, I don't think I can. I can't take a player that's been picked already, David. Is that correct?
I mean, if you want to implement that rule and then take Harold Fannin, that's fine, because I'll just take Jantu with my next pick.
Oh yeah, that's actually it's brilliant. So I'm at a point where I am really starting to consider A.O. Manor is the only RB tight end I'm considering at this point, just with the knowledge of what we have. I think I'm going to go Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. Did not run at the combine, but ran on-field drills. And as we talked about in our last video, scouts were saying he looked phenomenal in the on-field drills.
Gauntlet, he looked really good in.
He's got a chance at tight end 3 in the class. Just like David was saying, guys that have a chance at RB 6 in the class. Well, here we have 1, 2, 3, and we'll have a 4th guy probably coming off the board here soon that also has a chance at tight end 3 in the class. So in this tight end premium, I think it's just the shot that I want to take versus going wide receiver. And I think all the RBs that I really liked just went off, and now it's kind of just a little bit more. I'm still happy to shoot shots at RBs in this range with later thirds, but I think tight end is kind of the direction I want to go here.
Yeah, that was going to be my pick. If you didn't take him, I feel a little bit better about him. The last guy I mentioned how far back was that? I think 208. I mentioned a bunch of guys, and that's been everyone that's gone to this point except for Terrence Ferguson. We'll take him. Had an excellent combine himself, I believe. I do think I think the other guys that have gone before him have a better shot at tight end 3, but I think he's the last guy that's realistically in the mix there. So 175 tight end premium. If I'm getting a starting tight end at the 3.5, that's pretty great. Even if he's not like a difference maker there, even if he's just a bye week fill in, or sometimes in 175 you can even flex tight ends. So I'll take Ferguson there, and then I think after this point it gets really interesting. So I'm really curious to see where JP goes from here.
Yeah, the guy that I'm taking is pretty clear to me. It's going to be Alec A.O. Manor here. His combine was pretty darn good. I think there's some guys that we highlighted more so that were a little bit more impressive, but I mean, his combine was good. Came in a little bit smaller than I was hoping, just under 6'2". His speed score is 88th percentile, burst score 85th percentile. We knew he's probably going to be a really good athlete. Check that box. And also his college dominator is 40.1. It's 83rd percentile. College target share is 90th percentile. So we saw most of those big numbers come in his sophomore year after not playing at all as a freshman. So his first year playing in college, he had a 1,000-yard season at Stanford, which they don't have a great passing attack. So if you just look at the market share, his numbers are really impressive, more so than just the raw production. So I think he's got a strong chance to go round 2. It's hard for me to see him escape the top of round 3 in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I think he was a good pick there. I think a lot of drafts he'll end up in the second round. A lot of rookie drafts, that is.
That is absolutely would have been my pick at that point as well. Like I said, I'd been considering him loosely, but my process just didn't allow me to snipe you, JP. I had a deal with myself. I can only break process to snipe you once in this draft. That being said, I am not breaking process here. I am shooting my shot at RBs. I'm going to take Woody Marks, running back, USC, 4.54, I believe, was his 40 time, which is not fast, not slow. It's just the guy's an athlete, not all otherworldly. 208 pounds, so not a big guy. Would have liked to see a little bit more speed, but I believe it was he caught 47 passes or in 4 of his 5 college seasons. He did also just meet with the Texans at the combine, I believe, and that's interesting. Would love to see him go somewhere where he has a chance to, take over a backfield a year from now, something like that. Would love to see him go somewhere where he could take it over immediately as well, but not everyone's going to get that chance. So just a guy that I think is worth taking a shot in. I think running backs are the way to go at this point because I don't think there's any tight ends, unless you believe in Gunnar Helm, worth taking a shot on, which honestly I might consider it my next pick, depending on who you guys take at running back.
No, fair.
I was looking at which running back I was going to take next, and then I found a tight end that we should have been talking about, I think, with an outside shot at tight end 3. Not sure I would have taken him over Ferguson, but I might, honestly. He looked really smooth. His father was an NFL wide receiver, something you love, Justin. Rondé Gadsden, man, I think he's got just as good a shot as anyone as being an impactful tight end, fantasy tight end. I think he belongs in that tier with, Arroyo to Gadsden here. I think he belongs at the back of it, but I do think he belongs in it. So I'm going to go ahead and take him. And man, this board still feels pretty strong at this point.
Yeah, their third round is actually pretty interesting. And I think it's a pretty deep class. I mean, we say that. We'll see how it actually shapes out. But I'm going to stick with the theme here with running back, tight end, and I'm going to go with Rashard Smith. I really, really like him here. Personally, I prefer him a little bit to Woody Marks because he's just a little bit younger. I think Rashard Smith's probably the best receiving back in this class. I think Travion Henderson, Scatabo, some of those guys have a shot, to take that crown. But no, he ran a 4.39 still at the 40-yard dash there at the combine. So I think he's a pretty darn good athlete. And if he's a good receiving back, I think he showed some pretty good stuff as a runner as well, even though he only had 1 year as a runner. It's pretty impressive with all things considered. So I think that he's going to have a role in the NFL. And I think that there's some upside there like we've seen from a guy like Tyrone Tracy just recently.
Can't disagree with you there. A little disappointed you took him because that would have been my next pick. Not really sure what direction to go here at running back. At tight end, Gunnar Helm does inch me a little bit. Only like we talked about in our last video.
Yeah, I got sniped with Will Howard.
I like to draft. Remember that conversation at the beginning we were talking?
Good players.
Yeah, that's the one. That was the word. That was the word I was looking for. Good players.
Who's the national championship quarterback in this draft?
I think Jeremiah Smith could have literally thrown the ball to himself and caught it. That man did it all.
Put a little respect on his name, man. I'm not going to take him in this round either.
No respect, dog. No respect. Oh, he's fine. He's fine. At this point, I'm absolutely hammering either running back or tight end. Gunnar Helm, I'm just too scared by his slow 40 time because maybe he'll improve on it. But so I'm looking at running backs. Honestly, at this point, it's just flip a coin. And I think the direction I'm going to go is a Oregon running back, Jordan James. He was slow at the combine. So was Bucky Irving. So JP, you missed this. We decided he's Bucky Irving.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Didn't know that.
I mean, of course, we're joking there. Bucky Irving, phenomenal. James, we'll see what comes to pass. But as long as he's drafted, even if it's day 3, I'm still interested in him because I think he's good at football. So I'll just take a running back I think is good at football here.
This is kind of eye-opening for me. This is the first time we've done a 3-rounder. And I'm thinking, I could make it halfway through the 4th with players that, I could at least make a case for,
Yeah, I think there's some interesting wide receivers personally at this point.
That's what I was going to bring up, and I think we'll spend a little time after the draft talking about both the wide receivers and the quarterbacks still on the board. Just because I think we're going to spend a little time after. I'm not going to waste time going through everybody I'm considering. Probably mention some of these names later. There's one guy that's just standing out to me, especially if we're drafting right now without the information we have. I think Damian Martinez has an outside shot at day 2 draft capital. If not, I still think he has a good shot at least some sort of role like a Brian Robinson or something. At this point in the draft, the 311, if I can get a guy who gets a short yardage role on a team, that's great. I'll absolutely take that.
Yeah, and why don't we just go ahead and talk about some of those wide receivers? I think there's 4 or 5 names that could be considered. There's really 3 I'm more narrowed down on. 2 I'm not as focused on, but I think could be in this conversation is Isaiah Bond and Xavier Restrepo. But the 3 I'm really considering are Jalen Royals.
What if they're the same?
Yeah, we got Jalen Royals, Jack Bech, and Jalen Knoll.
Those are the 3 at the top of my board too.
Yeah. And a guy I personally really like a lot. Man, it's tough. This is actually not a bad group, in my opinion, for the back of the third, because we've gone RB heavy, which I think was justified. Because the RB,
I think so too, and even if some of those wide receivers get sprinkled in, some of these running backs and tight ends will fall down. So
yeah, I mean, even Gunnar Helm's still a decent option. Quinn Ewers, Will Howard are interesting, but I'm gonna go with Jalen Knoll personally.
I figured.
Yeah, he's got 99th percentile burst score. That's really, really impressive. He produced just as well as Jaden Higgins just about. And at the Senior Bowl, he was one of those guys that was getting raved about. So I think that he's going to be a good player. He ran a 4.39. So honestly, I just really think he's going to be good, especially with another NFL caliber player like Higgins to also produce 1,000 yards. I think what he did was pretty interesting.
It's kind of crazy looking at this board. I don't know that there are any massive reaches by any of us, and you still see Restrepo and Bond are 2 people I think get mentioned in the second round quite often of our rookie drafts here. Jalen Royals, I think Jack Bech.
Yeah.
Some of these quarterbacks we haven't even started talking about. So even in the 4th round, I think you're getting some decent dart throws this year. I guess my question to you guys would be, is it just that we haven't had the NFL draft, so it's easier to sell ourselves on everyone because nobody has bad draft capital, bad landing spot yet? Or is this draft actually this deep?
I mean, my personal opinion on it is this draft is not actually that deep, and there's a lot of mystery box with a lot of these players. They're not bad players. They're players you want to roster. Everyone we just drafted in that round, I can say I feel relatively confident every player that we drafted in that round that's not a wide receiver is a player that I want to roster on almost any league. The wide receivers, I think, have a good chance to be guys that we want to roster, but don't know for sure. Realistically speaking, we know, right? These 4 tight ends we took in this round, 5 if you want to take the 212, probably not going to be really very startable as a rookie, right? But they're going to be guys that think like a Chigakonkwo type of like guy, even like a Theo Johnson from last year type of guy who is going to have some value going into their second year because, now they've like had time to learn the offense. Maybe they dealt with injury a little bit and they're coming into their second year, right? So these are guys that are useful to have like on your taxi squad on your roster. All the running backs here will be guys that they're probably worth a third. It's hard to get a third for them, but as soon as the running back in front of them goes down with an injury, they're probably close to worth a second because they're a rookie. They're exciting, right? So like all of these players, they're useful for what they are. But if we're happy to have them, we love to roster them, but like we're probably not starting many of Eddie assets in this round at all, right? They're the type of players we want to roster, if that makes sense, which is deeper than some years. But just if we're telling ourselves, like, because we like these names and these prospects, that these are something that's going to help us win, that's a different story, right? It's just it's the right process and the type of players we want to roster, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do think that the strength of this class, like we've mentioned, is the RB and tight end, and it is deep. I think there's a lot of deep talent for guys that have a chance, but I mean, we have 16 running backs here in the first 3 rounds. There's not going to be 16 that go in the first 4 rounds. I really don't think that in the NFL draft. So I think anybody from Tootin down running back wise, I think there'll be maybe 2 or 3 names just in that grouping that does fall to 5th or 6th round. We're kind of surprised with at that point. So then they'll fall to the round 4. We won't be quite as interested. Still guys that we want to roster though. So if you don't have a 4th round in your rookie drafts, these running backs, they're the guys that you want to prioritize on the waivers because any of them, even the day 3 guys in a really strong class, if they are the backup on any given team and they get an opportunity, they're going to see a big rise in value. And that's the one position we see it all the time with that running back.
I mean, kind of to your point, Justin, we're not really looking for impact players and starters in the 3rd round. Yet we've got guys that could be starting tight ends. We see a couple of players that we think are going to be at least have a role in a backfield. We see a couple of receivers that could be at least on, the 3rd receiver, if not the 2nd receiver on a team. I just think there's a little more upside. There's obviously going to be several misses in here, if not most of these guys as misses. But I think we'll look back on this, 3rd, maybe even early 4th, and say, wow, that was some cheap ways to get some decent dart throws.
I mean, but last year's 3rd round, right? We had a lot of wide receivers that were potentially interesting. I saw Troy Franklin going there occasionally, right? Like a Roman Wilson, who profile was not like terrible. Then at running back last year, we saw Bucky Irving, Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, right? These guys that are not that different from these types of RB prospects, in all honesty, in my opinion, right? Like, I think the third round is often kind of looking like this, give or take. At the end of the day, like, I think we're always really excited about the draft class that we're in. I do think that the first round of this is phenomenal. I don't know how far the tier after that goes into the second. Like, it's going to be very draft capital dependent, but I just want to preach temperance with our expectations on this, because typically speaking, it's always worse after the NFL draft than what we think it's going to be. So
always, every single time.
Yeah, I mean, several of these guys are reasoning for drafting, like, Terrence Ferguson or Rondé Gatson for me was, well, they could be tight end 3. If you're drafting after the NFL draft, you know who tight end 3 is. So a lot of those question marks go away. A lot of these, running backs get sorted out for us. There's a couple receivers even on the board that could go in the second round. Jalen Royals probably going to go in the second round. Jack Besh probably going to go in the second round. I'm not saying go out and overspend for late thirds, but I'm also okay taking as many shots on these as you can. Or, if you only have 3 rounds in your rookie draft, maybe try and sneak a few extra fab into some of the deals you make between now and the draft.
I mean, just what you're saying right there, right? The realistic probability is that we're taking 2 of these tight ends, I think, probably, right? Comfortably. Maybe 3. 3 tight ends out of this group of 5.
I mean, back of the third, I think even later, upside tight ends get drafted, right? You're probably right, though. 2 or 3 is probably more realistic.
And the wide receivers here, there's probably going to be a couple that we're drafting this round. I think the number's probably going to be 3, maybe 4, potentially, that we're drafting between the back end of the second, early third.
Yeah.
But those guys are a very low hit rate when we're looking at third round wide receivers. Even late second round wide receivers are a pretty low hit rate. Like there's, a point earlier in the second, it's usually top 50, top 40, depending on the data that you look at, the time frame that has the higher hit rate. So it's so easy to paint this picture and everything. And like from a process standpoint, like these are rosterable players, but beyond that they're rosterable players, I think asserting anything else or hoping for anything else out of that third, I think you're probably better taking anything in this range, mid to late thirds, and trying to roll it forward anytime you can. Talking about in those deals, adding a little fab to it and trying to roll it forward to a 26th third and having that flexibility, I think is probably a better process and probably the same even at the back end of the second, very much so the same. Once we kind of get 207, 208, 209, if you can roll that forward to a 26 second, probably the right move to make just because of the flexibility it gives you too. Although I don't know that I am as excited about rolling a 110 forward into a 26 sex. I know for sure that it's not going to end up being a 110, 11, 12 again the following year.
On that note, are you willing to move back for cheap from the middle of the first to the back of the first? Because I don't see much of a difference. JP, you think that's something you're interested in, or are you just going to try to hold for now and stay patient?
Yeah, I think you could argue anywhere from the 105 to the 111, 112 could be just one tier altogether. I mean, you took Ibuka there at 105. I might not take him to a 110, but I think he's got just as good of a case as any of those guys in that entire range.
I think it's not a bad process to pick up extra assets, especially in a deeper format. The one thing that I will say is there are some glaring landing spots to me that just scream. If a wide receiver goes to Buffalo and they finally hit on a wide receiver, because I don't think they have the wide receiver on their roster that's going to be the wide receiver 1 for the next 4 years with Josh Allen, for example. Chargers, Cowboys, running backs. There are some things that getting your choice right at the 105 potentially, or getting somebody from that tier above pushed down if, somehow that running back to the Chargers pushes down Cam Ward or pushes down Hampton or something, right? That there is something to be said about being at the top of the tier in case the tier above widens and the value gain there potentially be greater than the cheaper drop down. But once you're talking like 107 to 111, like if I could pick up the 304 to do that or something like that, 107 to 110, maybe something like that, I'm at least like having a conversation with myself. Is it worth it? But yeah, I kind of lean towards, I think that the tiers are going to I think this tier is going to probably end up separating into 2 tiers based off of landing spots and things we think. So I think, well, oh, we view this as a mega tier, it's probably going to split into two.
I think that's probably realistic.
When you consider draft capital as well, I mean, if Burden is, the top of the second instead of the first round, and Igbuka is pick 19 to the Buccaneers or something, and they don't bring back Godwin, yeah, I think that's really going to come to fruition for a lot of these things. Because Matthew Golden could rise up and be a tier of his own. He could be wide receiver 2, taking the class, pick 16 overall or something.
And also, like, the ability to tier down later on is probably still going to be there if you're looking to just tier down for cheap, right? Like a third to drop 3 picks in the first round. Like, that's not unreasonable. I think you can try to get something like that later. However, if the tiers solidify in a way that you didn't think they would, getting back up would probably be much more expensive, right? So, like, I think you have a bit to lose by trying to tier down like that at this point too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because Tyler Warren, we talked about the Colts.
I think a third's really cheap anyways. I'd have to be on the clock and see my board and be comfortable with, the next 4 picks or whatever. But let's say it's a mid-26 first. How far are you willing to go from, let's say, the 106? Would you go down to 111, 112 for a 26 first? Or is that too far right now in the process?
Smash. For a 26 first, are you kidding me?
Oh, did I say first? I meant second. I'm sorry.
For a 26 second from the 106...
You're just willing to go a couple?
110 is the number right now for me that I think I'm willing to do.
Yeah, 112 is too far. Maybe I'll consider 111, but yeah, 110, I think I would.
So I think my big takeaway from this is just to preach patience. Don't need to roll back yet. Don't need to buy into spots yet. Don't need to trade out of tiers quite yet. Obviously, if you get a great offer, take advantage of that. But there's still time. We're all getting impatient. I was talking to these guys earlier today about how I've got a little bit of trading blue balls right now. Thought I would have a couple of big ones done over the last week and a half. Neither ended up happening. So I get it. We all get it. We get bored. We want to make things happen. We want to do stuff. Don't waste your assets just because you're bored. So stay patient for now and make sure you're getting the right deal if you're pulling the trigger.
You could also offer me a better trade, David.
Kid, but I feel like we're pretty darn... We're like right there, It's just about who's going to squeeze harder on the last asset.
I might just sit. I don't know if the trade's in my best interest. I got to do what's best for the team. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Data Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And for all of us here at the Data Construction Podcast, until next time.